So I'm excited because we're doing an actual mix tonight. Up to this point, we have done mastering. So the way I want to do this a little differently tonight, I am going to keep the chat down to a minimum just because we have a lot of work ahead of us. Fortunately, I guess in terms of time, we have a little bit less of a track count, so it's not like a mix where we have 100 tracks to deal with. It's a little bit more stripped down, which is a beautiful thing. T-Ray's making magic with just a few strokes of the brush. So yeah, I'm really excited to hear this and to work on this. But we're gonna keep the talking down to a minimum. But what we will do, like always, is we'll stop at points, and if there's any immediate questions, we'll go ahead and address those. So we're gonna go ahead, and I think what I'm gonna do, I had a really good suggestion from a buddy today. This maybe I'll go through the drums, and then I'll stop for 5 minutes, and then we'll continue on through to the next part. Maybe we'll do bass and guitars. We'll just kind of feel it out, okay? Because I like to work fast, so maybe we'll knock out things faster than usual. So I'm excited. But another thing I'd like to do differently today is I would like to play the producer's mix, okay? So that way we can hear the whole song in its entirety and just kind of get a feel for what kind of project it is, and then we'll get right into it. So as always, feel free to chime in on the chat. If you have any questions, Corey will be here to answer things live, which will be useful to everyone. He knows a lot of what I'm doing, so he'll be able to hopefully field a lot of those questions. And like I said, we'll address things as we take a couple breaks here and there. Just in terms of what we're looking at here, we're working in Ableton Live. Those folks that are here, I think you all have been sort of with me up to this point. Ableton Live is like every other DAW. But we are looking at basically groups of instruments here. You can see I have my main instrumental and vocal subgroup. As I click on tracks, we'll see the inserts on the bottom. My plugins are on the left. As we go through the instrumental subgroup, we have our drums broken out. We have our bass. I notice I don't have a bass subgroup. I'm going to make one just because for some reason that bugs me. Here we go. Guitars. And then we have keys and strings. Or keys and synths, excuse me. Effects. And we have our vocals broken out into lead vocal, background vocals. We have our ad-libs. And we'll just kind of see what happens as we go. Excited. Let's go ahead and take a listen. We're going to hear T-Ray's producer mix. So again, T-Ray is I'm Really a T-Rex. And he's the one that produced, wrote, and I know he performed most of this. I'm going to assume he performed all of it. So he is the singer, he's the writer, he's the performer, he's the producer, and this is even his producer mix. So I mean, he kind of does it all. So we're going to go ahead and play this. Let's take a listen, and I'm going to go ahead and solo just his stereo bounce. Okay, and just so you understand, the stereo bounce is essentially identical to the tracks. I think he had just maybe a little bit of limiting on there, potentially, or some, maybe some light master processing. You can see that I have it gained down by 11 dB because, and even my tracks are gained down a little bit as well. If you notice, you can see that, these are gained down minus 15, just to get me a certain peak level to start with on my master bus. But that's what we're looking at. So let's go ahead and take a listen to, hold on, here we go. So the song is called Nice Guy Anthem, and let's take a listen to the producer mix. Here we go.
East Coast ship is trying to deflate. Fog in my mind trying to concentrate. New city living from the bottom to the ceiling, but my microwave's broke, lots on my plate. Age of Colossus on the decline. Relearning my lyrics, trying to sing, I'm fine. The world won't stop spinning and I won't start winning if I can't push past this point in time. Yo, hit my line on the firmament with language I ain't deserving. Say that I'm full of guile, got a bowl full of tricks, but that just ain't my style. Pressure gone up, she called me a little. What? Came at me vertical, world star uncut. Miss Independent, I get juvenile. You don't even wanna hear this freestyle. Only you could say that love was a lie. Only you foundation, shaky castle of clay. You want my response, here's what I'll say. You don't grow tired of burning. How does that help without learning? Throw my name in candle fire, won't fill the gap, adore your desire. Go talk to your God, go read you some psalms. Don't try to ever talk shit about my moms. Miss Independent, acting juvenile. You don't even wanna hear this freestyle. Only you could say that love was a lie. Only you would step so far out of line. Tell the truth. Yeah, I can tell you're talking at your pride. Telling you I'm so glad that I said goodbye. I'm mad that I missed your ass, but I'm so glad I still cannonball where I live best. I'm mad that I missed your ass. I wish you would be good enough for you could make it last. Oh man.
Yo, how do you talk about someone's mom, bro? For real. Like, my mom is literally the nicest person in the world. Ask anybody. Anybody. Talking trippin'. Cordless phone, that's trippin'. Damn.
Only you could say that love was a lie. Only you would step so far out of line. Tell the truth. Yeah, I can tell you're talking at your pride. Telling you I'm so glad that I said goodbye to you. I'm your biggest regret. Yeah, I'm the nicest, meanest mofo that you done met. I'm your biggest regret. Yeah, I'm the nicest, meanest mofo that you done met. I'm your biggest regret. Yeah, I'm the nicest, meanest mofo that you done met. I'm your biggest regret. Yeah, I'm the nicest, meanest mofo that you done met.
Sick. All right. Yeah. I love how he has it labeled demo. It's like, dude, it's like I wish every demo sounded like that. Okay, so in comparison, right? So we get a feel now for the song, the vibe of the song, the arrangement. Now I'm going to play his last released single, which I've gain matched this, okay? So that way it's basically the same loudness, right, as we just heard. Okay, and it'll also be a fair comparison for me to A/B anything I want to hear while we're working on the mix. So I'm going to play this now, and I want you to hear the difference. Okay, I want you to hear the depth and the fullness of what a finished mix and master on his project is going to sound like. So this is his just recently released single, Toxic Positivity. Okay, so check it out.
Yo, cruising mean green with the radio, I'm speeding silence. Got my tint on who's that, ACF full blast, I see styling. I'm busy questioning about the mess I'm in. Where am I going? Should I throw the towel in? Yeah, scars on my back, XL vintage tee got them hiding. Citrus in my eyes, constant late replies, but I'm smiling. Despite everything, I go stay grinning. Where am I going? Should I throw the towel in? No. Sometimes life gon' throw dirt in your face. Dust it off, man, and hold your ground. Don't let it keep you down. Sometimes life gon' put you in last place. Lace up your kicks, take a step and smile. Don't let it keep you down. Yeah, now I could write a sad song about everything wrong.
Okay. Super sick track. Definitely check that out on all platforms. Toxic Positivity. So you can hear there's a big difference there, right? You hear this the size, right? The bottom, the smoothness in the mid range, the depth, the width. Like it's all just blow. It's immersive. It's beautiful. So it also hits at the same time. So there's a lot of that we're going to achieve today. And, you know, that's kind of like stylistically, that's the way I like to mix anyway. I think that's why T-Ray and I work well together, because that's sort of like just, that's what I like. And also, you know, we're going to see some stuff today which is reflective of my mixing style as well. You're not going to see me necessarily try to transform what he's given me, just kind of like as a quick note here, and then I'm gonna get started. So part of mixing sometimes is a lot of creative decisions, right? We do sometimes things to add to the production to increase the energy. But then I have artists like T-Ray who does so much already. He's spent so much time, invested so much time to bring this emotionally to a place where he's happy with the production. He's happy with the arrangement. He's happy with the effects on the vocals. But he's just trying to get it to that next level. And I love those kinds of projects. So what you're going to see is not necessarily me trying to transform the sounds, but me actually just responding more to the music and just doing things sonically that are going to get it from that. Let's say, you know, it's at 80% right now. We're shooting for that last 20%. And I think that's what a lot of people kind of yearn to get in their music. So, all right. So let's, so again, we got the original producer mix here, which you'll see me A/B up to a little bit. I'll gain it up as we go. If I start adding any type of limiting or anything like that, I'll give you a heads up. I got toxic positivity here just to give me a little ear check on my goal as to what I want to shoot for. And just as also a note, there are other tracks that T-Ray and I have talked about, like, you know, in terms of sonic goals for this project. But I do feel like in terms of getting it at least into that like 95% done, toxic positivity is going to give us a really good benchmark for that. So, you know, I got that as sort of my goal, just for ease of that, and also so YouTube doesn't ding us for copyright material for the other stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with that as sort of the goal. We have this kind of as where we left off. So you're going to see me A/B between songs to kind of hear where we were, so that I hear improvements, and also where we're going to make sure that I know that I'm doing things properly. So that is essentially how I keep myself in check. I'm just going to add one more thing as well. I know there's a lot to talk about, but I am going to start basically with my drums and work my way down. As I said, I might take a break after a little bit here, maybe when I'm done with the instrumental. So I am going to mute the vocals and first start on the instrumental. All right, here we go. I am freezing this track really quick because I want the auto pan to not like be random. I want to keep one setting on it. So that's why I'm doing that.
the towel and nah. I'm gonna read you some psalms. Don't try to ever talk. Psalms. Don't try to ever talk.
Okay, so at this point, I've done some EQ stuff, some compression stuff. Let me open the floor just for any immediate questions. I'm not going to go through every single thing I did just yet. I'll just kind of like blanket talk about a couple things. That way I'm not spending too much time on the explanation, but I'm happy to explain if anyone has specific questions. I can hear you through Zoom, or if you want to type something in the chat, you're welcome to do it as well. And no, T-Ray, you can't give me mixed notes yet. Unless there's, you know what, I don't want to spend too much time on that yet. I'm doing my best to honor the balance that you got so far. And that's actually something to keep in mind too. Like, you know, the reason why you guys see me doing a lot of like, the term gain matching, where like if I add a compressor and I change the gain structure, right, something gets louder or quieter, I'm going to turn it on and off to make sure that I'm not changing that gain structure too much, because there's a balance there that the producer likes. But for example, you saw me add some punch to the acoustic guitars. And I'm just double checking here. Yeah, I don't see anything in the chat. So I'm adding some punch to the acoustic guitars because we do? Yeah. All right, let's hold off on the acoustic guitars really quick. What is the question? I don't think.
You exaggerate the last instrument plus EQ so I can hear the difference.
Exaggerate. Was that what I was doing on the drums here? I believe it was this right here. Yeah, so I was basically, there was a little bit of edge in that drum track that I was trying to just take off when I heard the overall sort of picture. So here, I'll bump that up real quick. Yeah, and the key with that kind of stuff is that we're not, and you hear me say this like a broken record, I'm not trying to eliminate that tone from the drum. I'm just balancing it back a little bit. It's just because there's a little bit much of it, because that's just the nature of the drums. Plus we added some compression, that stuff comes up. We're just balancing it back a little bit. But yeah, so what I was saying about the acoustics is, like, if you listen to the producer mix.
Talk to your God, go read you some Psalms. Don't try to ever talk shit about my moms.
Right, you hear like the reggae, like acoustics. And, just as a side note, a lot of these things could change depending on what he wants. Like when we do our first round of notes, like he might say, hey, can you bring those acoustic guitars down a little bit? But for me as a mix engineer, as I'm hearing it, I do want to give those a little bit more clarity, a little bit more life, a little bit more impact. So, the reason why I did that was just to kind of complement what I feel the music is telling me that they're doing, right? It's not to make them overpowering. It's not to change the way they feel. It's just to make them the best version of themselves. So that's really what the goal is with that kind of stuff is. Some of these sounds you didn't hear me do anything, like the keys and the synths. Like I heard the piano and I was like, you know what? Like that's just kind of doing its thing. Like I don't feel like a lot needs to be done there. Same with the synths. Like I was just listening, just didn't need a whole lot there. Now, that stuff could change as we add the vocals, as we start adding some master bus processing, like those things could definitely change. But all in all, you saw me use a majority of EQ, right? And a lot of the EQ stuff you saw me do, like when I initially started out here with the, with the drums, there was some harshness, and it's that kind of drum track, right? It's got that sort of old school boom bap feel, which is awesome. But you see, like, I'm taking a little bit of that edge out with this EQ, the mid-side stuff to add that depth. And then you see me adding that energy back with this EQ, with a stereo version of an EQ on the top end to give the energy back, because that energy needs to be there. I'm just shifting it. That's all I'm doing. Okay. I didn't do anything to the snare. I did a little bit to the percussion. Now the percussion, there's some stuff happening later on with some claps. It will be, looks like I ended up experimenting with that and turning it off. But that'll be a conversation for me and the producer, where it's like, hey, do you want to hear those claps more? That could be a matter of compressing the loop, but we can also experiment with that a little bit. And T-Ray, if you're listening, you are welcome to chime in on that. I am curious if you want to hear more of those claps and the congas and things like that in the loop. Just let me know. I'll wait for Corey. Can keep an eye on the chat for that one. But yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of EQ going on there. Now, in terms of the overheads, the cymbals, right? They were a little harsh. So what I did there was I took out some of that harshness and again moved that energy just to a different place. I spread it out because it was a little mono, so I thought maybe it'd be nice to make it a little bit more wide. And then the auto panner was you heard when I turned it on, it was very extreme, but then when I dialed it back, it was just more of like a subtle thing. It's not something that's really heard, it's just felt. And I'm doing that just to make it feel a little bit more real, a little bit more, more than just mono, and just spreading the energy out a little bit to help give it to make sure it still has the impact that he wants, because he may want it to have more bite. If that's the case, we'll add those high mid frequencies back. But for now, I'm just kind of making it a little bit smoother version while still making sure it has its impact. On the overall drum bus, just adding some of that bottom end. You probably saw me do a lot of this mid-range stuff. I love doing this stuff because the idea is I'm gonna balance the mid-range in his mix, and then I'm going to, at the end of it all, on the stereo bus, I'll probably end up, or maybe on the instrumental bus, either balance that mid-range as a whole, as it is better balanced within each other, within itself. I'm gonna boost or reduce that and balance it back with the vocals and with the whole like master and everything. So you see me do a lot of that because I'm just kind of bringing clarity to some of the instruments. So that's what's happening there. We got tape machine. Tape adds nice color, a little bit of width, nice thump on the bottom end. You saw me reduce the noise reduction. Always do that because we don't need that noise unless somebody wants that noise. We talked about this already. This is just a little bit in that range, just a little bit of that, I don't know, boxiness, higher end boxiness. Not played with a couple compressors. I settled on this one. I just love Supercharger. It's easy. Just doing something to give it a little bit more that bite, just a little bit more that punch in the transients. When I bypassed it, it was like, the drums are there. When I turned it on, it's like, okay, I feel a little bit more of that attitude, and that's sort of what I get from this. So not doing a ton of compression, but just a little bit to add something without overdoing it, right? Back to all my rants about overcompression, trying to avoid that stuff. So yeah, I think that's kind of, wait, did I miss anything? I did that, Supercharger. Yeah. Added some tape. This is hit or miss normally with tape. It's like you do it. You can see I brought down that noise reduction. Just more fullness. But the idea here with the instrumental is that I'm sort of gluing the instrumental together with the tape. I don't recommend, over tape saturating things. It's just, it can get pretty nasty when you get into mastering and compressing and limiting and things like that. Just do enough to where it matters. Unless you're trying to overdo it. In that case, overdo it. So that's just for that color. It also adds a little tightness. And then we got this, the Verimu, the Slate VMU, or what the hell is this thing called? The FGMU, excuse me. Too many acronyms. But it's in mid-side mode, and I'm actually taming the middle on this. So I'm actually compressing the middle channel a little bit to help sort of get everything in the middle just kind of pulled back just a little bit. I'm just gluing the middle together, letting the sides breathe, which gives us added depth and just size to the overall mix. And I don't know if you all heard this, but I quickly A-B'd between the producer mix and what we had going. And I definitely heard improvements. Everything's starting to come to life, getting that depth in there. And then I A-B'd with Toxic Positivity, and it's definitely going in that direction. So there's no problems here. I'm feeling real good about everything. And yeah, let's just let's go ahead and keep plugging away here unless there's any questions. I'm going to go ahead and Command S. Did that a few times because you never know. If there's no more questions, we're going to go ahead and start jumping into the vocals. You're going to see me do similar things. I think I'm going to start off with just the leads. So I'm going to go ahead and mute the backgrounds and the ad-libs. And we'll go ahead and get started. I'll give everyone just another second. Formulate any questions you may have. Oh, Kavan's here. Different Kavan. Kivo Keys, Kavan. Xander. Man, Fendi. What's up, Fendi? All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Or I should say getting closer to getting finished. That's what we're trying to do.
Fog in my mind, trying to concentrate. New city living from the East Coast ship is trying to deflate. Fog in my mind, trying to concentrate. New city living from the bottom to the ceiling, but my microwave's broke, lots on my plate. Age of Colossus on the decline. Relearning my lyrics, trying to sing, I'm fine. The world won't stop spinning and it won't stop. East Coast ship is trying to deflate. Fog in my mind, trying to concentrate. New city living from the bottom to the ceiling, but my microwave's broke, lots on my plate. Age of Colossus on the decline. Relearning my lyrics, trying to sing, I'm fine. The world won't stop spinning and it won't stop winning.
cut.
Miss Independent acting juvenile. You don't even East Coast ship is trying to deflate. Fog in my mind trying to concentrate. New city living from the bottom to the ceiling, but my microwave's broke, lots on my plate. You hit my line, I'll affirm with language I ain't deserving. Say that I'm full of guile, got a bowl full of tricks, but that just ain't my style. Pressure freestyle. Disorder, like goodness me. Venom in the ink of your short story. I shout out the homies at SOAD. I didn't know you remade toxicity. Disorder, like goodness me. Venom in the ink of your short story. I thought that my morning wood could save the day. You sharpen your edge, I see how you play. Your foundation shaky. Shout out the homies at SOAD. I didn't know you remade toxicity. Shout out the homies at SOAD. I didn't know you remade toxicity. Disorder, like goodness me. Venom in the ink of your short story. I thought that my morning wood could save the day. You sharpen your edge, I see how you play. Your foundation shaky, castle of clay. You want my response, here's what I'll say. You don't grow tired of burning. Now does that help with unlearning? Throw my name in candle fire, won't fill the gap. You don't grow tired of burning. Now does that help with unlearning? You don't grow tired of burning. Now does that help with unlearning? You don't grow tired of burning. Now does that help with unlearning? You don't grow tired of burning. Now does that help with unlearning? Throw my name in candle fire, won't fill the gap, adore your desire. Go talk to your God, go read you some psalms. Don't try to ever talk shit about my moms. You could say that love was a lie. The homies at SOAD. I didn't know you remade toxicity. You could say that love was a lie. Only you would step so far out of line. Tell the truth. Yeah, I can tell you talking out your pride. Telling you could say that love was a lie. Only you would step so far out of line. Tell the truth. You remade toxicity. Disorder, like goodness me. Venom in the ink of your short story. I thought that my morning wood could save the day. You sharpen your edge, I see how you play. Your foundation shaky, castle of clay. You want my response, here's what I'll say. You don't grow tired of burning. Now does that help with unlearning? Throw my name in candle fire, won't fill the gap, adore your desire. Go talk to your God, go read you some. You don't grow tired. Fire won't. Now does that help with unlearning? Throw my name in candle fire, won't fill the gap, adore your desire. Go talk to your God, go read you some psalms. Don't try to ever talk shit about my moms. Miss Independent acting juvenile. You don't even wanna hear this time. Yo, you hit my line, I love Age of Colossus on the decline. Relearning my lyrics, trying to sing, I'm fine. The world won't stop spinning and I won't start winning if I can't push past this point in time. Yo, you hit my line, I love her with language I ain't deserving. Say that I'm full of guile, got a bowl full of tricks, but that just ain't my style. Pressure gone up, she called me a lil. Came at me vertical, world star uncut. Miss Independent, acting juvenile. You don't even wanna hear this freestyle. East Coast shivers trying to deflate. Fog in my mind trying to concentrate. New city living from the bottom to the ceiling, but my microwave's broke, lots on my plate. Age of Colossus on the decline. Relearning my lyrics, trying to sing, I'm fine. The world won't stop spinning and I won't start winning if I can't push past this point in time. Yo, you hit my line, I love her with language I ain't. Pressure gone up, she called me a lil. Came at me vertical, world star uncut. Miss Independent, acting juvenile. You don't even wanna hear this freestyle. Only you could say that love was a lie. Only you would step so far out of line. Tell the truth, yeah, I can tell you're talking out your pride. Telling you, I'm so glad that I said goodbye. Shout out the homies at SOAD. I didn't know you remade toxicity. Disorder, like goodness me. Venom in the ink of your short story. I thought that my morning would come save the day. You sharpen your edge, I see how you play. Your foundation shaky, castle of clay. You want my response, here's what I'll say. You don't grow tired of burning. Now does that help with our learning? Tell my name a candle fire. Won't fill the gap, adore your desire. Go talk to your God, go read you some psalms. Don't try to ever talk shit about my moms. Miss Independent, acting juvenile. You don't even wanna hear this freestyle. Only you could say that love was a lie. Only you would step so far out of line. Tell the truth, yeah, I can tell you're talking out your pride. Telling you, I'm so glad I'm mad that oh man, I'm mad that I missed yours. But I'm so glad I stuck at all where I live best. I'm mad that I missed
Okay, so I am now going to add my mastering chain, not for the purpose of mastering, but just to start getting some volume out of this. So watch your ears. We're definitely going to bump this up a few dBs. What I'm basically going to do is I'm gonna bump up my limiter so that way I can just sort of see where it starts hitting. And what that's going to do, if you think of this as a microscope, it's going to start doing just that. I'm going to start hearing things popping out. Now just to kind of like comment on some things that I just recently did. Here, let me go ahead and just, we're going to get a few dB out of gain just initially, or a few dB of gain, I should say. Remember, all this stuff is bypass except for the limiters. So I didn't just slap a whole bunch of stuff on at once. They're just ready to go, ready to go. So, so with the vocals, I think T-Ray's magic number today is like 700. It's just like I gotta remind myself that the producer artist is not listening in. But there's a just sort of a, it's like what you saw me doing with the guitars and such. You saw me like bumping up certain frequencies, but there's what is that? That's more like 8. There's just something about like, you know, certain frequencies based on the arrangement, the sound. He's got kind of like this cool kind of old telephony kind of thing going with the voice. So I'm trying to embrace that, but yet make it slightly, just slightly sweeter, not so abrasive, but yet still feeling the aesthetic. And like, you know, that seems to do the trick. It helps the vocals sort of rise above the mix while also feeling like it's filling a hole that may be there. So that's kind of what was going on there. And I took just a touch of this. See, like 500, just a little bit of something, just because it sounded a hair boxy. There was a little resonance there that I just pulled back. That's basically what's happening there. We're just, and then I bumped up some low end because that's, you know, that's like the proximity that kind of helps him come, just so it doesn't sound too thin. That's really what I'm doing there. But too much of it's going to make it sound muddy. What I love about mixing is that sometimes we do like these crazy EQ moves, like what I did here with the oh mans, and that, you know, that could easily be a mixed note. You saw me crank something up in here. I thought that was pretty cool. I think it was this one. Yeah, like this, you know, it's like we would never do this in mastering. But, you know, what's cool about this stuff is that what I'm trying to do, and everything has to sound, like it has to sound good. I mean, his goal here with some of these is that he's fitting things in terms of EQ, and he's also going for a certain vibe where he wants it to feel, he doesn't want it to be in the way. It's just kind of there. And that's cool, and I'm trying to embrace that, but I'm trying to enhance while at the same time getting out of the way of his idea. So that's why, you know, I'm going in here with these rap stacks and, you know, pushing some of that 700 to sort of like bring it forward. And you also saw me go back to his mix and listen, and that was helping me understand, like, okay, this lead is not just a lead with a bunch of vocals behind it, but it's gelling together with all these things at once. So I just kind of checked my ears to make sure that I had the right idea, because my assumption is that he's giving me his ideas within that producer mix. So I don't want to neglect that by any means. If I just go and do what I want and I send him the mix, he's going to be like, dude, you missed the whole vibe of this. So yeah, I want to make sure that I'm adhering to that. So yeah, so just making sure that I'm just enhancing things while trying to keep his intention at the same time. So like you got these low octaves, which I heard sort of disappearing. I couldn't quite hear them. So I thought instead of just cranking up the volume, maybe try adding something instead to, you know, and I'm shooting below that 700, which just happens to work out with the fact that it's lower octaves to these. And it works, right? I felt those come forward. They're not too up front. They're not too, they're not distracting or anything like that. But yeah, what's cool, remember with that EQ boost, what we get is depth. And that's something that's really important that people miss in a lot of their mixes. They're always busy cutting things. And here I'm adding things because there's stuff that sounds good in there that helps bring the sound into focus. And it also adds that extra depth that allows us to just kind of feel like it's almost 3-dimensional. So dope. All right, so I'm going to start playing around with this limiter. Watch your ears. Things are going to get louder, and then I'm going to go through and start picking apart some things that I hear that may be exposed now that I am going to make things louder. So stand by.
Shivers trying to deflate, fog in my mind trying to concentrate. New city living from the bottom to the ceiling, but my microwaves broke, lots on my plate. Age of Colossus on the decline, relearning my lyrics trying to sing I'm fine. The world won't stop spinning and it won't start winning if I can't push past this point in time. Yo, you hit my line on the vermin with language I ain't deserving. Say that I'm full of guile, got a bowl full of tricks, but that just ain't my style. Pressure gone up, she called me a little. Came at me vertical, world star uncut. Miss Independent, acting juvenile. You don't even wanna hear this freestyle. Only you could say that love was a lie. Only you would step so far out of line. Tell the truth, yeah, I can tell you're talking at your pride. Telling you, I'm so glad that I said goodbye. Shout out the homies. Pressure gone up, she called me a little. Age of Colossus on the decline, relearning my lyrics trying to Yo, you hit my line, I'll avert it. With language I ain't deserve it. Say that I'm full of guile. Got a bowl full of tricks, but that just ain't my style. Pressure gone up, she called me a lil. He made me vertical, world star uncut. Miss Independent, acting juvenile. You don't even wanna hear this freestyle. Only you could say that love was a lie. Only you would step so far out of line. Tell the truth, yeah, I can tell you talking out your pride. Telling you, I'm so glad that I said goodbye. Shout out the homies at SOAD. I didn't know you remade toxicity. Disorder, like goodness me. Venom in the ink of your short story. I thought that my morning would come save the day. You sharpen your edge, I see how you play. Your foundation shaky, castle of clay. You want my response, here's what I'll say. You don't grow tired of burning. Now does that help with unlearning? Tell my name a candle fire, won't fill the gap, adore your desire. Go talk to your God, go read you some psalms. Don't try to ever talk shit about my moms. Miss Independent, acting juvenile. Accept your kicks, take a step and smile. Don't let it keep you down. Yeah, now it's the breakdown. Don't you go break down. We'll step so far out of line. Tell the truth. Yeah, I can tell you're talking out your pride. Telling you, I'm so glad that I said goodbye. I'm mad that I missed yours, but I'm so glad that's the cannonball barreling past. I'm mad that I missed yours. I wish you had me, but I love how you could make it last.
Yo, how do you talk about someone's mom, bro? For real. Like,
Age of Colossus on the decline. Relearning my lyrics, trying to sing, I'm fine. The world won't stop spinning and I won't start winning if I can't push past this point in time. Yo, you hit my line, I'll avert it. With language I ain't deserve it. Say that I'm full of guile. Got a bowl full of tricks, but that just ain't my style. Pressure gone up, she called me a lil. He made me vertical, world star uncut. Miss Independent, acting juvenile. You don't even wanna hear this. Could say love. You hit my line, I'll avert it. With language I ain't deserve it. Say that I'm full of guile. Got a bowl full of tricks, but that just ain't my style. Pressure gone up, she called me a lil. He made me vertical, world star uncut. Miss Independent, acting juvenile. You don't even wanna hear this freestyle. Only you could say that love was a lie. We'll step so far out of line. Tell the truth, yeah, I can tell you're talking out your pride. Telling you, I'm so glad that I said goodbye. Shout out the homies at SOAD. I didn't know you remade toxicity. Disorder, like goodness me. Venom in the ink of your short story. I thought that my morning would come save the day. You sharpen your edge, I see how you play. Your foundation shaky, castle of clay. You want my response, here's what I'll say. You don't grow tired of burning. Now does that help with unlearning? Tell my name a candle fire, won't fill the gap, adore your desire. Go talk to your God, go read you some psalms. Don't try to ever talk shit about my moms. Miss Independent, acting juvenile. You don't even wanna hear this freestyle. Only you could say that love was a lie. Only you would step so far out of line. Tell the truth, yeah, I can tell you're talking out your pride. Telling you, I'm so glad that I said goodbye. I'm mad that I missed yours, but I'm so glad that's the cannonball barreling past. I'm mad that I missed yours. I wish you had me, but I love how you could make it last.
yo, how
You hit my line, I'll avert it. With language I ain't deserve it. Say that I'm full of guile. Got a bowl full of tricks, but that just ain't my style. Pressure gone up, she called me a lil. He made me vertical, world star uncut. Miss Independent, acting juvenile. You don't even wanna hear this freestyle. Only you could say that love was a lie. Only you would step so far out of line. Tell the truth, yeah, I can tell rhythm in the ink of your short story. I thought that my morning would come save the day. You sharpen your edge, I see how you play. Your foundation shaky, castle of clay. You want my response, here's what I'll say. You don't grow tired of burning. Now does that help with unlearning? Throw my name in candle fire, won't fill the gap, adore your desire. Go talk to your God, go read you some psalms. Don't try to ever talk shit about my moms. Miss Independent, acting juvenile. You don't even wanna hear this freestyle. Only you. Talk to your God, go read you some psalms. Don't try to ever talk shit about my mom. Miss Independent, acting juvenile. You talk to your God, go read you some psalms. Don't try to ever talk shit about my moms. Miss, talk to your God, go read you some psalms. Don't try to ever talk shit about my mom. Miss, ever talk shit about my moms. Miss Independent, acting juvenile. You don't even ever talk shit about my moms. Miss, ever talk shit about my mom. Ever talk shit about my moms. Miss Independent, acting juvenile. You never talk shit about my moms. Miss Independent, acting juvenile. You don't even wanna hear this freestyle. Only you could say that love was a lie. Only you would step so far out of line. Tell the truth. Yeah, I can tell you're talking at your pride. Telling you lie. Tell the truth. Yeah, I can tell you're talking at your pride. Tell you lie. Tell the truth. Yeah, I lie. Tell the truth. Yeah, lie. Tell the truth. Yeah, I can tell you're talking at your pride. Lie. Tell the truth. Yeah, I can tell you're talking at your pride. Telling you, I'm so glad that I said goodbye. Oh man, I'm mad that I missed yours, but I'm so glad I touched the cannonball barreling past. Oh man, I'm mad. Don't let it keep you down. I said sometimes life gon' put you in last blast. Oh man.
Yo, how do you talk about someone's mom?
Thought that my morning would come save the day. You sharpen your edge, I see how you play. Your foundation shaky, castle of clay. You want my response, here's what I'll say. You don't grow tired of burning. Now does that help with unlearning? Throw my name in candle fire, won't fill the gap, but
All right, let me field some questions here because right now I am just going over some details. Loving this song, by the way, T-Ray. Just like the one-liners in here are just great. I wasn't actually trying to remix your song. I was actually just listening to that line over and over again to EQ it. But yeah, so I'll just go over a couple things here. These are I can't stress enough right now. I'm just going over some details. You know, when I'm going back and forth between like toxic positivity and listening to this, you know, the depth stuff is there, like the size is there. I'm just right now I'm fighting a little bit, just trying to get the drum loop to feel still like lo-fi, but I'm not trying to lose the edge on it. So that's something that, you know, I may send him a version with like an edgier drum now, and then, you know, we can, when he's happy with other things, I can fine tune that as we go through different versions, because I don't want to make that too smooth. You know, that's just like part of the character, but at the same time, we don't want to make it too abrasive for the people enjoying the song. But yeah, so are there any questions just kind of off the bat what I'm doing before we just talk about a couple things? So as I was saying before, you know, balancing frequencies and then going on to the master chain and sort of dialing back things as they are now balanced is a big part of what I do. So, you know, I caught a couple spot things, like this ad lib here was getting a little abrasive, so I put the dynamic EQ on there to help control that moment, right? The dynamic EQ moves with the voice. I also went back to the lead a couple times. There was that line where he was like, "Don't ever talk shit about my mom," and it gets a little abrasive there. It sounds like, yeah, just it's a little something, just movement of the voice. So I'm trying to control that to keep it consistent. Nothing super major there. I think I was hearing a little bit of, you know, and again, like the loudness is like a microscope, right? So, you know, I was hearing a little bit of this boxiness. I put a little bit of it back. I mean, even a half a dB makes a big difference. There was a little bit of abrasiveness, in the sort of the high mids that I was adding. So just pulled some of that back a little bit. I can't stress enough, like, these are the kinds of things that people will try to fix on the master. They'll go in and they'll be like, all right, let me just make a cut here, bring up my EQ, and then they'll be like, oh, the whole thing's harsh. But if you really listen, it's not the whole thing. It's the drums. And if it's the drums, then kill that. There we go. And if it's the drums, then like go in and fine tune the drums, right? Don't just kill everything because of one thing. Don't make everybody do 100 push-ups because one person made a mistake, right? So, this isn't the military; it's mixing. So, so basically, just trying to identify those things, and that's sort of like these layers that we're building in terms of our workflow, right? We're starting with the individual things, right? Trying to get the frequencies to work together, to balance the frequencies together, and then it's like, okay, now let me fine tune it on the subgroup. Now let me fine tune it on the instrumental bus, and now here we are on the master bus, just fine tuning the overall sound. So it's like, when this song and Toxic Positivity are two different songs. So I don't want to kill the vibe of this song. In fact, we might be close to just like a first mix for the artist to start to kind of pick apart and give me notes. But at the same time, if I hear that sort of abrasiveness, I want to identify where that is. So in many cases, it was in those drums. And again, we'll check out what he wants with the percussion and stuff like that. But the overall instrumental, I felt, was maybe a little bit abrasive in those high mids. The vocals are super smooth. I had no issue there. So what I did was I started sort of pulling back this using the mid-side EQ, because that high mid abrasiveness is not in the sides. It's not like floating around in reverbs and things like that. But it's actually just in the center imaging of the, maybe some of the guitar, some of the drums. So I'm going to balance some of that back, and then using the mid-side, function, it's going to add that depth as well. It's just getting more depth as we use that mid-side EQ. But, if I do need to take some out of the sides, I pull the slider towards the sides, towards the middle, and then you can see I got a little bit of that coming out. So, if it's needed, it's needed, but it really wasn't as bad except for just in the middle. So, and then you saw me go in and, now it's funny, I'm getting he did give me Ace of Base, All That She Wants, as a reference for this song, just for like the 90s vibe. And, this synth stab here is totally that. I love it. But I felt like it needed a little bit more energy, and that energy did come with this compressor, which has auto makeup gain. So as I compress, the volume's coming up as well. And it's not something I'm necessarily needing to gain back. I don't feel like I need to gain match this. I'm actually getting the best of both worlds. I'm getting volume, but I'm also getting that compression, which gives me some of that attitude, a little bit of punch because of the slower attack time. Just kind of set to that as a default on the supercharger, which I like. So that's nice. The piano was still all good. You saw me adjust the fader a little bit. I think the guitar in general, I did do, as sort of an experiment, I added on the whole guitar bus just like a little bit of this, just to bring everything a little bit more into focus, and I liked it. I think it really did something cool. One thing I didn't mention earlier was about the bass and this JJP bass plugin. This is parallel processing right here. So these are happening at the exact same time. It's not one after the other. It's not like this is happening and then it's happening right here. It's actually, they're both in parallel. So the JJP bass is adding sort of an opposite tone, just a big fat kind of gritty tone, and I blended it underneath in hopes that it'll give it more presence, a little bit more impact, and not necessarily change the tone that T-Ray picked on his bass. But we'll see what he says. Cool. So overall vocals, I added some of this mid-side compressor just because that center impact, right? I'm only adding, a dB and a half. So just a little bit, just to kind of push the center image of the vocals up a little bit, and to sort of give it that impact. It's just something that I find myself doing at the tail end of mixes. Once everything's nice and big and pretty, it's like, let's just add a little bit more of that impact and that, a little bit of that mid-side compression. And again, it's like not, I say again, but I think I might have explained it in a different session, where I'm basically pushing this up. I'm hitting the compressor. Let's hear if it's, or see if it's compressing at all.
Could say that love was a lie. Shout out the homies at SOAD. I didn't know you remade toxicity.
Yeah, it barely, you know. So I'm really not getting compression out of this. I'm getting more just a little bit of volume. And when we're talking about the difference between a vocal being slightly too quiet and slightly too loud, you know, a dB and a half, 1.7 dB goes a pretty long way. And then I even dialed it back a little bit because I was using this as almost a volume control. I know it's like so you're toying with 2 dB of volume. Wow, you know, really changing the game there. But you'd be surprised, right? Like when you have I would consider this to be a pretty dense arrangement. You know, you got synths, you got guitars, you got drums. You know, I'm trying to make the voice gel without being too loud and without being lost. So it's like, yeah, we're using this mix wet dry to sort of fine tune that feel. So push it a little bit to where it's a little too loud, and then use the mix wet dry to pull it back a little bit. So in terms of the the limiting that we just added so far, I mean, we got a good amount of gain added to this. So much so that we have let's see there, yeah, so about 6. So we got about 11 dB added right there. You know, we're hitting about -10 LUFS. We are using true peak limiting, so we still have a -1 on our ceiling. -10 is not quite mastered loud yet, but it's, you know, loud enough to start giving us a feel for what loudness is going to do. The thing is, if I do something with this, I do it to the vocals as well, and I'm kind of loving how the vocals are sounding, at least in my opinion. So up to this point, that's what we got. Now, the next thing I'm going to experiment with, and this is sort of a cool thing I like to do in my mixing, I'm going to find a signal chain that I like on the chorus. You know, the verses are definitely more chill. There's a sense of dynamics that I'm going to add to this tune. I'm not necessarily sure if it's going to be something I'm going to do on the instrumental bus or something I'm going to do on the overall mix, but I'm pretty sure it'll probably just be on the instrumentation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to find, like I said, a signal chain. I'm going to find like maybe 2 or 3 plugins, maybe just one. Oh, I do remember that I did add some. Yeah, I did add some of the M stereo expander. How much did I add? Just a touch. Yeah, just a little bit, just to give the whole thing a little bit more width. Anyway, 2 or 3 plugins that are going to basically be automated on and off, and on just in the choruses, off in the verses, and the idea is just to give the whole thing a little lift when it gets to those choruses. That's all it is. So let's see what happens.
Wanna hear this freestyle? Cut. Miss Independent acting juvenile. You don't even wanna hear this freestyle. Only you could say that love was a lie. Only you would step so far out of line. Tell the truth. Yeah, I can tell you talking out your pride. Telling you I'm so glad that I said goodbye. Shout out the homies that go with you. Could say that love was a lie. Only you would step so far out of line. Tell the truth. Yeah, I can tell you talking out your pride. Telling you I'm so glad that I said goodbye. Shout out the homies at SOAD. I didn't know you remade toxicity. Could say that love was a lie. Only you would step so far out of line. Tell the truth. Yeah, I can tell you talking out your pride. Telling you I'm so glad that I said goodbye.
So, but just to give everybody I normally don't talk and work at the same time, but this is something that I think is pretty cool. Shout out to Ableton for just being the dopest DAW ever. But this allows me to basically group plugins and bypass them. So we got the whole session at the BPM of the song, which allows me to edit on the grid. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop this signal chain on in the choruses. There we go. So I'm just going to look at the arrangement here. I'm just going to look where the vocals are at. And
I'm so glad that I said goodbye.
Okay, so there's my next one. This is pretty powerful. You just got to watch it. You know, with all this stuff, you got to make sure you're doing stuff tastefully, not destructively. So let's see. Where's my next one?
Freestyle.
Right there. Beautiful. And let's see. I think we got our bridge.
Yo, how do you talk about someone's mom, bro? Trippin', 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 trippin'. Cordless phone, that's trippin', damn.
Only you could say that love was a lie. Only you.
All right. So if you're catching what I'm doing here, like these subtleties make such a big difference, right? I'm adding a dB on the bottom end. I actually took a little bit of that harshness out, and I'm adding a little bit more on this EQ on the top end, only because this EQ doesn't have a frequency that I can adjust, so it's a little abrasive. So I just want air, so I'm pushing that up by half a dB up top, and so I'm basically creating like a big smiley face, but just so subtle. It's a subtle smile, if you will, and that is just being added there. And then we got MOTT, which is just Slate's version of OTT, which I'm in Ableton, so I should just bring up the OG or OG OTT. But here we go with just MOTT at 1.5%. If you caught it when I turned it on, it was just like because it's like an angry snake, I guess. No, it's basically it's cranking up all the highs. It's super exciting, everything. But you can look what I'm using, 1.5%. And it makes a difference. Like, listen to how the chorus just kind of lifts when we hit this. Hold on. Let me find this. Go automation. Here we go. So yeah, just check out. I'm going to turn it off, right? So I'm going to kill this. That way we don't hear the change. And then I'm going to do it with it on. So listen, here's without it.
Pressure gone up, she called me a little. Came at me vertical, world star uncut. Miss Independent, acting juvenile. You don't even want to hear this freestyle. Only you could say that love was a lie. Only you.
Okay, now hear the transition with it on.
Pressure gone up, she called me a little. Came at me vertical, world star uncut. Miss Independent, acting juvenile. You don't even want to hear this freestyle. Only you could say that love was a lie.
I love it. It's fatter now because I got this little cut right here. This little cut is taking care of that abrasiveness, so it's not like the chorus, it hurts. It's like, oh man, it's big. So that bottom end bump, like just adding that low, that really just adds something just bigger on the bottom, so you feel it, right? And then this MOTT is just adding a little bit of excitement, but just enough to feel it. And I'm keeping that. That's great. That little lift, it's just emphasizing his arrangement. He's got a good arrangement.